Hello and welcome everyone to Casa Árabe, to another of our online conferences. Today we have a very important anniversary to reflect upon. We have done a series of activities for the past decade on the issue of Syria. Prospects of the outbreak of the revolution 10 years after this dramatic conflict. This session today of the Aula Árabe Universitaria, the cycle of talks, the second cycle of talks that we have organized with the universities in Spain, in Madrid mainly. And today's session is presented in cooperation with the master's degree program in international relations and African studies at the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, whose coordinator is Itziar Ruiz Jimenez Arrieta. She joins us now, and I will give the floor to Itziar for a few words from her. Itziar, adelante.
Hola,
She will speak to you in Spanish.
Hola, buenas tardes. En primer lugar, quiero agradecer a Casa Árabe y al programa de Aula Árabe por esta maravillosa oportunidad que nos da las universidades madrileñas, colaborar con ellos en el diseño, realización, que en este caso al Máster de Relaciones Internacionales y Estudios Africanos le permite haber propuesto la venida a esta conferencia y poder contar hoy con uno de los mejores politólogos que hay en Europa en el abordaje del análisis del conflicto de Siria, un conflicto que tiene en el contexto de un máster en Relaciones Internacionales como es el nuestro, en la Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, que ha sido central en la agenda política internacional en la última década, ¿no? Y lo ha sido por múltiples motivos. Lo ha sido porque ha sido un espacio de esa lucha geopolítica entre las grandes potencias, a la cabeza de ellas Estados Unidos y Rusia, pero también porque ha removido el tablero geopolítico de la región y desde la región, con muchos de ellos implicados en ese conflicto, como que también ha tenido ramificaciones múltiples, tanto en el ámbito de los debates normativos de la política internacional. El conflicto en Siria ha dado lugar a profundas controversias jurídicas, políticas y éticas sobre los derechos humanos, sobre las intervenciones militares humanitarias, sobre el principio de la realidad de proteger. Es uno de esos centrales de ese ciclo de procesos de primaveras árabes que también se han reproducido en otros lugares del mundo, como es el caso del continente africano, que es el otro ámbito de especialización dentro de este máster, y también ha dado y plantea múltiples retos en el ámbito de ese otro espacio central de la agenda política internacional, que ha sido la lucha antiterrorista, la lucha contra el Daesh. Y con las múltiples ramificaciones, por ejemplo, ha tenido el conflicto dentro de la política de la Unión Europea, en concreto en el ámbito de los refugiados, ¿no? Pensábamos que es una oportunidad única poder contar en el marco de Aula Árabe con un especialista como Salam Kawakibi, que no solamente es uno de los mejores politólogos expertos en Siria, sino que además tiene un papel muy importante, y eso en el máster nos parece muy interesante poder invitar como ponentes a conferencias como esta a académicos, sino también a personas involucradas activamente en la práctica internacional, en este caso en la lucha por una transición democrática en Siria, y poder contar con ese doble perfil. Además, en el caso del profesor Kawakibi, ha vivido bastantes años en Siria, en concreto en Alepo, y pensamos que sus reflexiones pueden ser de suma interés para los alumnos del máster y para otras múltiples personas que nos pueden estar escuchando a través de este espacio, en el ámbito de las cuestiones actuales de las relaciones internacionales, ¿no? Que es donde se ubica esta conferencia en el contexto del máster de Relaciones Internacionales. Por eso para nosotros ha sido maravilloso haber podido plantearle al Aula Árabe el poder contar con la presencia de Salam. al que ahora Karim va a presentar con más detalles.
Muchas gracias, Itziar. Thank you very much. Itziar has done an introduction to contextualize today's conference within her program of, or the program she leads at the Autonomous University of Madrid, regarding why is it so central for this master in international relations and African studies at this important university in Madrid. Now, a brief introduction on my behalf on today's subject. The war against Syria's civilian population has been ongoing since 2011, and its impact is deep. It's profound. We have been, as I was saying at the beginning, we have been following this conflict here at Casa Árabe, of course, from afar, with activities such as conferences and academic seminars, but also Spain tried to bring together part of the Syrian opposition in 2012 in an effort to promote dialogue for that day after the Assad regime, a day that never came. Like in many other countries swept by the Arab Spring, the beginning of the revolution brings back vivid memories of hope and excitement. Those images, unfortunately, are now totally divorced from what we see today, from the horrors that followed from the war. Now, the death of 500,000 human beings, the destruction of at least 60% of all infrastructures, and the disability of an estimated 1.5 million people, with some other 200,000 living in jails and arbitrary detention centers. Also, the internal displacement of half the country. Here we have a chart, a diagram that the UN High Commission for Refugees has published, where we can see the huge amount. On the right, you can see the scale. It's millions. Okay, so we can see that it goes up to 13 million people, of both refugees and asylum seekers and internally displaced people. This just shows you how large the results, the consequences of this conflict have affected the inhabitants, and how it has created a unsustainable situation in terms of the humanitarian dimensions. We're speaking of an authentic tragedy, the exile of more than 6 million people also to different countries in the neighboring region. And although the violence has decreased over the last 2 years, the situation persists. However, neither the humanitarian catastrophe that I was talking about, nor the Syrian people's demands appear in the headlines anymore. The consequences of this conflict are enormous in terms of international security, and the role of regional and international players is undeniable if we are to understand the Syrian disaster. After 10 years of war, Bashar al-Assad, with the help of his Russian and Iranian allies, has got back control of most of the country. And the dream of a free Syria is somehow confined to a northwest pocket made up of Idlib city and the surrounding countryside. So within this context, what are the prospects for a potential solution? This is why we're here today, and we are delighted, as Itziar was saying, to have with us Salam Kawakibi, a friend of Casa Árabe, that has visited Madrid a number of times, and we have the pleasure of having him today. He co-founded the organization The Day After, supporting a democratic transition in Syria. He is a senior researcher at the University of St. Andrews Center for Syrian Studies. He's also a co-founder and member of the advisory board of the Mediterranean Citizens Assembly Foundation, a member of the board of the Institute for Research and Studies on the Arab World and Mediterranean in Paris, and a member of the scientific committee of Confluence, a Parisian journal which focuses on the Mediterranean region. Salam was from 2009 to 2011 a researcher, the head researcher at the University of Amsterdam's Department of Political Science. And before that, he was director of the Institut Français du Proche-Orient in Aleppo. Needless to say, he has widely published articles and papers and have been translated into several languages. So first of all, ahlan wa sahlan, welcome, bienvenue, Salam, and I want to thank you also for agreeing to do this in English, which is not your first language, and we are trying to find this lingua franca for everyone, or for more people to be able to understand us. And it is for many people, unfortunately, English, but at least we have a tongue in common that we can share. So as I was saying, first of all, a big thank you from Casa Árabe and from the university. And I wanted to start with a question that for people who haven't followed this is probably the most basic one. How did we get here? How did this happen? I mean, why did the revolution erupt in Syria? Some argue it was not only provoked by the wave of Arab uprisings, but that the discontent had been cooking already in Syria for some time prior to 2011. It was not only political, there was an important economic crisis, there was a drought as well. And so how did that become a national uprising movement? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Karim, and my thanks to the Casa Árabe and to the university. And I'm sorry for my exotic English, but I will try to be the most clear possible. It's not my first, neither my second language, but it's my third language. I learned English from the conference and from the debate, not from the books. As you said, it's not only the wave of Arab Spring that provoked what's happening in Syria. We must know that Syria, since 1963, is under the power regime of Ba'ath Party. It's a national socialist party copied from the Mussolini experience, Mussolini party, and the Hitler nationalism, social nationalism of Germany. Even if we represent them now in some Western media like secular party or socialist only party, we forget that the base of nationalism based on the pure Arab race and the superiority of those who founded this party. It's not a democratic party at all. From the foundation in the 30s, after the independence of Syria in 46, that since 63 to 70, it was a Ba'ath party in the power, but not tribal, not confessional, not familiar leaders. Some officer from the army was on the head of the country, and in 70 it was the coup d'etat of Hafiz Assad, the father of the actual president, Bashar al-Assad. He made his coup d'etat under the name of reform and under the name of the opening to the other component of the political sphere in Syria. It was not like that. It was worse than before. He built his regime on a copy of the North Korea regime, believing that he need to finish with or cancel all the civil society activity, also to transform the governance on what I called securitocracy, something based on only security service. Even he pushed the army to be more weakness than before, because he come from the army and he make his coup d'etat. He have afraid from another coup d'etat against him. Then he divide the army, and he put his family related on the head of the main forces of the army and security service. Since 1970, it was also a regime who instaured what I call also the fair culture. All people have fair from their neighbor, from their families, from their son, from their brother, sister. All people must, or in theory, must write a report about the activity of his next. And it was very helpful to install this regime of scare, of fear, scare, sorry, it's the word, it's scare, and terror, and based on the logic of security service. We had, and still now we have in Syria, 5 main security service who manage all the life in everything, in economy, in social area, in culture, in politics. Even if you want to open a boutique, you need to have the authorization from different security service. And those 5 security service don't work together. And it's not a chaos, it's what I call also the organized chaos. We divide between them, and they must work against themselves, the others, to preserve the security and the security of the regime. Because if you have some coordination between security service, perhaps they can organize a coup d'etat, or they can reinforce their capacity to change the regime. Then 5 different security services who work in parallel way, and in the end, all their result or their work go to the head of the regime. It's the president and the apparatchik around the president. Also, we had many legends diffused in Europe and mainly in Western countries that first, Syria, it's a socialist system. It's the capitalism of the family. It was never a socialist system, especially since 1970. In the middle of the 70s, also the regime encouraged the implication of private sector who are very close to him, who share with him the benefit of the trade, of the industry, of the traffic, of all things legitimate or illegitimate in the economic sphere. Then other legend, when we talk about the secularism of the regime, the regime used the religion to divide more and more the society, to control it better, on following the colonial rule, divide to better control, to better dominate the society. Then they reinforce the ignorance and the obscurantism in the religious sphere, and they attack all the tentative or all the initiative to propose a reform idea or reform project on the religious thought. And for that they build, and in the Assad time in Syria, we have built more mosques than the history of Syria since the beginning of the Islam. In 50 years, the Assad regime, father and son, they built mosque more than the mosque built in Syria since the beginning of the Islam. It's not by love to Islam, not to promote the moral or the moral principles or value of all the religion. It's to put people inside, to occupy people by how to pray, how to make Ramadan, how to think about the issue, very detailed issue in the religion, without any engagement in the public sphere, without any engagement in civil society activity or in political activity. Also, we must know that before 2011, Syria didn't have any media, private, in the sense of free media. We had public media like Pravda in Soviet Union, or like the media under the regime of KGB in Soviet Union. Also, we have private media financed by the son and the brother of the apparatchik of the regime. What I mean by that, the people cannot have any information, they cannot express themselves in the media, and everything it was under control in this issue. Also, for all the internet, in some time, it's very funny, in sometimes when you make your you buy internet link or abonnement, I don't know what to say in English, the organism of internet give you your password. It's not you who choose your password. They give you a password from their service to continue to control your exchange. I wrote a paper under the title Internet in Syria, or Internet. It's more internet than internet. For that, the situation was very bad situation. Some people also in the Western Union believe that with Bashar, the son of Assad, who come after the death of his father in 2000 to be president, we changed the constitution in 5 minutes to change the age of the president from 14 to 34. It was his age in this time, and 34 for one time in this history of Syria, and after that it will become 40. The constitution was changed only to adapt it the situation to Bashar. And all the Western also diplomat wait from Bashar some reform, some opening the political sphere, some prisoner, releasing prisoner. Nothing from that happening. It was worse than before. He started to put more people in prison. He started also to liberate only the economy, but all the time in his mind, the economy must be dependent to his family, his clan, without any social or developing in the general situation in Syria. And also in the middle of 2000, in 2005, the prime minister in Lebanon was killed, and some people attribute the killing to the Syrian regime or to Hezbollah. Still now, nobody know exactly what's happening. But after this date, the relation between the regime and the Western country become worse than before. And Syria start to send some jihadists to Iraq to fight against the American soldier in Iraq. And from this time, Syria start a good relation with some network of jihadists. And we will see after that those network of jihadists was injected after in the Syrian revolution to change the nature of this revolution and to have the pretext in front of the Western to say, you see, I fight against jihadists. We know very well those jihadists from where they come, who used to use them, and how. Also, another economic dimension linked to what we call in French sécheresse. I don't know in English what Syria suffer from 2 years or 3 years of no rain, and many thousands of people was pushed from the rural area to the big cities, and they start to build anarchic, chaotic zone, and without any social service or health service or any service at all, school, everything. It was really like a favela in Brazil. And in those area, we had many problem of criminality, from poverty, from incest, from all what we can imagine on problem on society in some such poverty around the big cities like Aleppo, Damascus, Homs, Hama. And with the also I mentioned that, but I focus on also more. It's the corruption, endemic corruption, systemic corruption, built to control and to divide the benefit between those who are allied to the regime, who protect the regime, who present their services to the regime. And in such situation, we can add the lack of liberty, lack of dignity. All those elements, all those factors push the people to go in the street to ask. First, they asked for reform. We must mention that very clearly. In the first demonstration, people used to ask for reform. They didn't ask for regime change. But after that, the regime used the violence and the killing, in massive killing, of course, they start to ask for regime change.
Salam, for this first segment, that it gives us some background to understand why people poured down to the street. You spoke about the securitocracy, those divided in five large security apparatus, somehow not sharing information, competing against each other, a culture of fear and terror amongst the population, of that organized chaos, You also spoke of nepotism and corruption on behalf of the president's, let's say, close family, relatives, and other, let's say, close allies. Also, you spoke about the drought, the sécheresse is drought, and how that led to more people leaving the countryside and wanting. Obviously, everyone wants a better life, and when crisis hits the countryside, the usual reaction is to go to the cities, as you said, creating a series of social problems. We're going to go to our second segment, and maybe I'd like, I mean, this second segment, I wanted us to talk about the different players. I mean, you have depicted so far the internal context that led to the revolution, or at least to the outbreak of the uprisings. We don't know probably who was behind the this demonstrations. I mean, we know that they were very spontaneous, and that, like in many other Arab Spring countries, uh, it was these demonstrations were lacking in leadership. They were not organized in a sense that they had clear leaders, nor did they have a clear objective behind, as you say, besides reform, but that is a very large concept. Also, Isqat al-Nizam, the fall of the regime, it has been proven to be an objective for certain, but without thinking of what to do the day after. What happens if we do manage to make the regime fall, which didn't take place, but in other countries it did, and there was no plan B for what would happen afterwards. But I'd like you to start maybe with talking or describing who were these actors, how did they organize, and how were they somehow transformed. As you also mentioned, this violent extremism was also an element that the regime itself somehow unleashed or released to contaminate, to pollute those social forces that were claiming for new rights. But once you talk about that, I'd really like you to then encompass or to open it to those big powers that we know are totally involved or have taken part in the worsening of the situation. I'm mainly thinking about the powers based in Tehran, in Washington, in Moscow, but also non-state actors that you have already pointed towards, like Daesh, like Jabhat al-Nusra. How, you know, how was that domestic flame how did that suddenly become regional and international, and why is this, why are these all these powers intending on taking a role, on playing a role in the future of Syria?
Yeah. Between Syrians, we have debate about the date of the beginning of starting of the revolution. Some people talk about 15 of March, and some other for 18 of March. But it's not a problem at all, because in the 15th of March, it was in a small demonstration in Damascus after a police agent aggress a citizen in the old market, old bazaar, and the people start to make some protestation in the street, And of course, 2 days after, in Daraa, in the south of Syria, some young student wrote on the wall, "It's your turn, doctor. It's your turn, doctor." It's a message to Bashar, who is a medicine doctor. And your turn, it mean after Ben Ali, after Mubarak, it's your turn. Of course, the security arrest all those young students, and they torture them, and they some of them was killed and some other not. And when their fathers go to the head of the security, it was the cousin of the president, asking him to release their son, he answered with something very provocative. And it was the Bouazizi of Syria. He said, forget about your sons, go back to your home, try to make another sons with your wife. If you cannot do that, ask me to do it for you. You can imagine what is the reaction in the rural, in the traditional, and conservative society in this area. And it was the beginning of a massive demonstration, very pacific, starting in Daraa, after that in all Syria, every Friday, because they finish the Friday ceremony in the mosque and they go out to start their demonstration. Even Christian opponent used to go to the mosque in Friday to go with the others in the demonstration. It was very peaceful. It was, as you said, without any framework, no leaders, but very quickly those young people start to organize themselves in what we called this time coordination, local coordination. Those local coordination used to aware the people to not be armed, to not be violent, to stay passive, to stay peaceful. And for that, those coordination used to be the first target on the repression of the regime, because as our friends know, the tyrannic or the despot prefer to have in front of them people with weapon, because if they have in front of them people with roses or with a bottle of water, they cannot kill them like that. But for this issue, in one very big demonstration in neighborhood of Damascus, young man called Ghiyas Matar, he started to offer to the police agent a small bottle of water with roses. And for that, he was killed quickly, because it's a very dangerous way to manage this confrontation between those who want to kill and those who want to stay in life and to share their the life with others in peaceful situation and democratic issue. The problem also that in Syria, as I mentioned in the first part, we didn't have any space to exerce a political activity. We didn't have a political party except in the clandestinity, and the people work individually, even if they are from the opposition, but they cannot organize themselves, they cannot communicate together. For that, the opposition in Syria used to be very weak. Many of them was killed in the prisons. Others was exiled in Europe, in other Arab country. Those young demonstrators found themselves very lonely without this framework, who sometimes can organize the revolutionary movement, but they was aware about the necessity to organize themselves in those local coordination. In the beginning, the regime used to send cars, plenty of weapons, to put it in the area of the demonstration, to encourage people to use this weapon. And those young people go ask the police to come and to catch these cars, plenty of weapons. They are aware about this dangerousity of militarization of their revolution. It was very clear in their mind. But like my friend Gilbert Ashkar said, when the regime used machine gun, helicopter, tank to kill demonstrators, of course, some people will take weapons, will stole some weapons from the regime unit. And in the first step, it was also some soldiers from officer who make defection from the army because they didn't want to kill their citizens, because in their mind the army is to fight against the external enemy, not to fight against their own people. And those people come to the demonstrators with their weapons and to protect the demonstration. The beginning of the militarization of the revolution, it was to protect the demonstrators. Very quickly, the massive killing, everyday daily massacres push people to be also to defend themselves, to defend their family, to defend their area. And the regime, he used also very provocative way. He used to film all the torture and killing with video and diffusing on their social network. And this issue provoked also some other reaction, rape of women, rape of children, killing of Hamza al-Khatib. 14 years he was cutting and killing, and they send his body to his family after this atrocity. In 2012, the regime start to release some jihadists from the prisons. Those jihadists who used to send them to Iraq, after their mission in Iraq, when they come back to Syria, they used to be arrested and they used to be based in Sednaya prison. They released them in 2012, the beginning of 2012, pushed them to fight against him, provoking also the radicalization of the movement. It's also very social and psychological issue. Syrian people are not, the majority of the Syrian Muslim are not radical. They are religious, conservative, but not radical at all. The Syrian Islam is very social religion. It's not a jihadist religion. It's not against the other. It's only in the family. It's a practical issue. When people was killing without any protection from anybody, they feel themselves released from the international community, from their friends, and the spirituality become very interesting issue. They come back to their belief, and here some manipulator can use them to push them more in the radicality or in some radical issue. But believe me, the radicality was very a minority of the component of the revolution till 2013, when the regime used the chemical weapon in August 2013. 1,500 civilians killed in 2 hours in neighborhood of Damascus with sarin gas, and it's documented by the United Nations. It's not rumor. Then in Syria we have some small radical groups. In 2013, those small radical groups start to be reinforced by Iraqi state of Islam, Islam State of Iraq, who start to be Islam State of Bilad Sham, or start to be Daesh, and they come to those people saying, you see, your democratic friends, the democratic values of Western country didn't do anything for you. You will be continue to be victims all the time. Come to us. We will give you capacity, military capacity, economic capacity, and you have, in addition, the God protection. And from this date, we can talk about the beginning of the Islamic State. But Islamic State and Al-Nusra, they continue to be a minority of the component of the Syrian rebels. But the militarization of any revolt, it's a gift to such a regime. The regime, he attacked first the local coordination, the medical service, the food service. But when the rebels become armed and attack the regime with a big number of defection in the army, the situation start to be very helpful to the regime, even if he was in a very dangerous situation in 2013 and 2015. Damascus was very in dangerous situation, threatened by the rebels. For that, in 2013, it was the intervention of Iranian, of Hezbollah, Lebanese Hezbollah, of Shia militia from Iraq, Shia militia from Afghanistan, under the patronage of the Iranian Bazdaran. In 2015, also it was the direct intervention of the Russian army and the Russian paramilitary mercenary, like Wagner society, of massive killing people. And it become a massive killing situation. It's become a chaos, and in this time, the regional and international powers interfere in Syria. Each of them choose one component of the rebels to support, and we start to have chaotic situation. And it was a benediction to the regime, because even in Western country, we start to say, no, this revolution become a dangerous revolution. Those people are supporting the Islamic State, those people supporting Al-Qaeda. And in the reality, it was not true. Till now, it's not true. It's not the The Qaeda and Islamic State used terror also against the population. Since this time, and it's very important to say the Russian intervention in 2015, it was not against the Islamic radical groups. It was against the rebels, secular group, and the real revolutionary, and also the exchange trade between Daesh and the regime under the patronage of Russian for petrol, for food and other stuff. It was very easy to do through some intermediary, and the Syrian lost their revolution with such what I call in French diabolique matter.
Salam, we have one third segment, and I do think that it is important to understand how this domestic dynamics that you have explained to us in the previous block, they led to an internationalization of the conflict. However, it is not a balanced share of the conflict. I mean, you have mentioned that international powers each started to support a specific player or actor within the conflict. That's probably when it becomes, for the non-expert observer, where it becomes very blurry or very confusing and difficult to understand. And as you were saying, you would think that as an international player would try to neutralize a specific ideological leaning non-state actor, and that logic is not what you would expect. I remember a diagram. I don't have it now, but a diagram that showed all these powers, like the Gulf countries and the Western countries and the United States and Russia and even France, and you had also I was saying the Saudis and Qatar and all these, and they were supporting sometimes even people who were enemies within the domestic map. And that's where it became very difficult to understand what was going on. I remember that I think we could follow this conflict more or less until maybe 2015. I remember the 2013 red line of Barack Obama, who said that if chemical weapons were to be used, then that would be the red line, and that the United States would interfere. Nothing happened, and that sent, I guess, a really wrong signal for the regime, who then realized that they could really go on and push even further their attacks to the civil society and population, and also organized opposition. So, I mean, I know it's difficult to try and summarize and synthesize 10 years of conflict, and we do have an audience that is some of them are specialized because this is what they're studying at a master degrees level, but we have some other friends of our that are listening to you right now that probably don't have all this inside information. So, I mean, the third segment is about the prospects. What are the exits, the possibilities for a solution? I mean, when we see the images uh, of the country, and I have to say that we are using a few images that are free of copyright that we find on Flickr. Uh, some of these images are just generic of what has some of the actors, the maps. We saw images of military of both Russia and the United States and Turkey. We haven't mentioned Turkey, but it's a very important player as well in this conflict. So I know, again, it's difficult to summarize. 10 years have passed. The infrastructure is has been reduced to ashes in many places. The lives of so many Syrians have also been completely wiped out and demolished. But everyone is tired. And this might offer maybe an exit, a compromise, a way to turn a page. I don't know what is your analysis of the likely prospects of the potential exits for this Syrian conundrum.
As you said, Karim, the humanitarian situation is very bad, but also we must mention that more than the half of the Syrian people are not under the control of the regime. The regime controls 12 million of Syrian people, and other 7 million was in exode, are in the exode now, and others in the area controlled by rebels or by by Kurdish forces in the north, east, or east of Syria. Also, 2 years ago, Assad, he said very clearly that now, after the depart of those people outside for Syria, because he considered them all as part of the opposition, even if they are child or old person or woman, or they never fight, but they are from the area who was engaged in the opposition. He said verbally, we have now a homogeneous society. This word was mentioned in the Hitler discourse of 1933, the last time in the contemporary history. Homogeneous society, pure society. For that, now those refugees in Spain, in Germany, in France, they are not allowed to come back to Syria. They don't want them to come back to Syria. And more, in the next election in few months, they are forbidden to vote because they are outside of Syria. It's like this, he controls also the future of this country. Syria, it's open space. We have 5 occupations: Iranian occupation, Russian occupation, Israeli occupation, Turkish occupation, and some American in the north who are next to the Kurdish forces, but also it's foreign groups. I talk about the main forces because under those forces you have small groups of Afghani, of Iraqi, of everything. Political solution was proposed. The plan of peaceful solution was proposed by Kofi Annan in 2012, but nobody wanted to apply it. After that, we have many temptations from United Nations without any success. Now the United Nations, to say that they do something for Syria, they put people from the opposition and from the regime in Geneva to discuss about the future constitution. Like if Syria suffer from a constitution. It's not the problem, the constitution in Syria. We have a constitution, not very good, but it's not very bad. But the problem in Syria is that we never apply the constitution since 1963. We have a constitution, we amend the constitution, we never apply the constitution, even if it's the constitution amended or product by the power, the regime. The Russian cannot continue to invest in Syria without economic return. They need to have the return of their investment, military investment. The Iranian, the same things. But the difference between Iranian and Russian, that the Iranian have also in plus some ideologic interest. The Russian, they don't have any ideologic interest. They have strategic interest. They use Syria like to bargaining with Western country about Crimea, Eastern Ukraine, the gas issue, and to put their foot in the Mediterranean. And they say it. What is amazing and very interesting to observe that the Russians are very frank when they declare their ambition, where they are cynical. They said the future of Aleppo. One Russian very high professor, he told me, "I'm sorry, my friend, but for Aleppo it will be Grozny solution." In their mind, it's not a problem. They said it. But from the other side, the friend of the Syrian people, the Western country, the democratic country, they limited themselves to declaration, to regret some violence, to hope the end of these massacres without any real diplomatic intervention. I don't talk about military intervention. Nobody talk about military intervention, but even diplomatic intervention was never on the table of Western country. Especially United States of Obama was very far from the Syrian issue. Their main issue, it was to sign the nuclear agreement with Iran and not to frustrate Iran to opening the Syria issue. Trump, it was like Trump declaration, tweet, and not other things without any decision. Biden now he have many other priority, and Syria it's the 5-6 priority. It's not very urgent. Europe who pay them. Europe paid 13 billion euro for humanitarian help in Syria. But they continue to pay and not play. They continue to pay for humanitarian issue like that. Their conscience is good, but they don't engage themselves in political issue. Now Russia will ask Europe to be involved in the reconstruction. Europe must refuse this engagement if he cannot play any political role. But unfortunately, we have now a Spanish head of the foreign affairs in European Commission, but we don't have foreign European affairs unified. We have French, Germany, Spain, Italy. Each country manage their relation with Syria differently. For that, I don't see any perspective in middle view, I don't know, to find a solution. Turkey are very afraid from the development of Kurdish power in the north. They forget now everything their main issue is to protect themselves from any Kurdish threat. They managed their relation with Russia. Russia managed their relation with Israel. Russia protecting Assad. Netanyahu and Putin are very friends. It's really salad russe. Nobody can tell you, even the prophet can tell you what will be the solution in the next months, even in the next years. But if it's my last word, I want to say some words who was, Karim, our friend Hassan Abbas. He died a week ago, and he wrote a very important text concerning the revolution. I will read it for you. Call it whatever you want, criticize it as you wish, betray it, deceive it, divert it, dig the ground under it, color it, curse it, do whatever you want, because, as Galilei told his detractors, it still revolts despite everything, and it goes on, for it had started only to go on until it's achieved that which the people want, a dignified life without injustice and without obscurantism. Hassan Abbas. Thank you, Karim.
Thank you very much, Salam. And I actually didn't know that that Hassan has passed away. May he rest in peace. And I'm very touched by his words. I do think that it is a consensus amongst the Syrians I've always either read or spoken to that obviously there is. It's very difficult to know what lies ahead on this long road to achieving freedom and all those ideals that were behind the first the outbreak of the revolution. And revolutions very often, we have heard this so many times, take many years until they achieve their objective. I mean, what is obviously of extreme concern is the circumstances, extremes, terrible circumstances that the Syrian people have to go through until they achieve these objectives. We have a few minutes for the Q&A, and we have a couple of questions already coming to us. I also, I mean, it's funny that you used the metaphor salad russe, which is a Russian salad, or ensalada rusa. It's somehow kind of ironic as well, because it seems to me that Russia has pretty much the last word, or has control over how this has the upper hand, as they say in English, on how this conflict or the exit of this conflict is evolving. At the beginning I remember during 2012 and up to 2014, there was talk of Geneva as a capital or as a city where peace talks were going to take place, were taking place, or there was, at least a set of powers trying to find an exit in Geneva, but it was displaced or replaced by Astana, and that just immediately gave us an idea or a reality check that things were not happening in Geneva, that the real negotiations were taking place in the Russian sphere, with Iran sitting there because it couldn't sit in Geneva, and the Turks as well. So, I mean, that's one of the things that you might want to I don't want to monopolize the word, because we have questions from, this one is from Aurora Moreno. Gracias, Aurora. In the first part of your talk, Professor, about the lack of media plurality and the difficulties for internet access, Aurora would like to know, how is the situation now, and how and where can one find accurate information about the conflict?
Very interesting. I start with answering your question, Karim. Yes, Geneva was averted by Astana process. Even if the Russians said, no, we want United Nations to continue their activity to find a solution, we support them, and at the same time they launch a parallel process who are very different from Geneva process. Concerning the media, it's one of the positive result, because I talked about the end of the revolution. It's not the end, of course, but it's temporary end. About the killing, massive killing, etc., very negative issues. But also we have some very positive issues, very positive result. First, the return or the re-emergence of civil society in Syria. Now all the humanitarian, education, health service in the area out of the control of the regime, it's do it by civil society. Also, we have a very positive result. It's the media. Now the Syrian discover what mean a newspaper, what's mean TV, what's mean internet, to exchange, to talk, to express themselves, to write their opinion. And it was also, we must recognize that, it was also supported by Europe, those new, what we call the alternative media, what we call also the citizen journalists, because we killed all those who can express themselves as professional. We start to ask some young people to cover, to film, to take pictures for the demonstration, to send information about what's happening inside Syria, because even the Western journalists cannot go. It will be arrested by the regime or kidnapped by the terrorist groups. That then we have a new media, we can call it alternative media. They now, after 10 years, we have a good experience, we have a good product, and to have a good information about Syria, we have a large choice. But in English, you have the Syrian Observer. It's a website who translate articles from Arabic to English for Syrian people or from Syrian people. You have also Syria TV. It's in Arabic, but it's very also professional, and they give good information. You have a new research center. Our center, Centre Arabe de Recherche d'Études Politiques de Paris, we have many Syrian researchers. They start to discover what mean social sciences, because in Syria it was forbidden to study political sciences or everything, anthropology, ethnology, it was completely forbidden. Now we have Haramoun Center in Istanbul, who make good research on Syrian issue. They publish sometime in English also in their website. It's a new and something very positive also, the artistical product. We have movies, documentary films, we have a lot of books. I invite you to read the last book published in Spanish of my friend Yassin Haj Saleh. It was translated last year, I think. I don't know if he present his book in Casa Arabe, I think so. It's very interesting testimony of his engagement. It's one of those people who pay 16 years of his life in prison. 16 years. And he is from the left political parties. And he lost also his wife. She is kidnapped by terrorist group. And he lives now in Berlin. He wrote a book, you can find it in Spanish. And also for those who are interested, I make now personal reclam or publicity. I was surprised that in Spain, University of Toledo, I think, they translate the book of Abdurrahman Kawakibi, طباع الاستبداد, the despotic characteristic of despotic. It's my grandfather. You can see his picture behind me. It's just translated to Spanish months ago.
Thank you very much, Salam. And just to confirm that we did have our dear friend Yassin Haj Saleh in Casa Arabe, and he presented his book with a very large audience. He then signed some of these books, and we were very happy to have him here. It's a very stunning testimony of, as you said, his harrowing experience in one of the regime's jails. Its name in Spanish is La Revolución Imposible, by Ediciones del Oriente y del Mediterráneo. Let me go to another question from Natalia Valdez. Gracias, Natalia, por tu pregunta. She says she'd like to know, which role do you think the Kurds in Syria will have within the next 10 years, knowing that they have been an important opposition force against Daesh? What role for the Kurds?
They was used against Daesh, but the Kurdish in Syria, they used to be the first revolutionary against the regime, because we must know that the regime was very hard to the Kurdish language, Kurdish culture, Kurdish right since the 60s. The first uprising in Syria, it was in 2000. One of the main uprising in Syria, it was in 2004 in the Kurdish area. But unfortunately, in the beginning of the revolution, the regime, with his very powerful network through the PKK, he manipulated the Kurdish militia to help him to repress the Kurdish population revendication and demonstration. They started to killing the head of the Kurdish revolution against the regime, our friend Mash'al Timmu. He was killed in 2011 or 12. And after that, the PKK militia start to control this area and to repress all the demonstration of the Kurdish people against the regime. Since this time, the PKK, who is a Kurdish Turkey party, separatist party, start to be to manipulate the Kurdish legitimate party, who have a very legitimate revendication. Now we have an area controlled by the PKK, We call it in Syria PYD, but it's PKK. Nobody are naive to say it's not PKK, except those who want to say it. It's their problem. And they are controlling the northeast of Syria, and their target first. It's not the Arabic component; it's the Kurdish component, because they have other 16 party against them, who compose what we call the Kurdish National Committee Council. But now, what is positive, they negotiate together to find a median solution, to find a solution to be involved more in a Syrian issue, not in regional issue, because PKK, they don't care about Syria only. They care about their dream of Kurdish state in Syria, in Iraq, in Turkey, even in Iran. But for the Syrian Kurdish, who have very legitimate rights, they are involved in the opposition, but also the opposition in Syria, they cannot. They are very influenced by the culture of the Arabity, of the Arab nationalism. They are a little bit far from recognizing the legitimate right of Kurdish, but the negotiation continue between PKK, the Syrian Kurdish, and their Syrian Kurdish and Syrian Arab. The main dangerosity is to create a separatist movement for some. For others, why not? If they choose to be independent from Syria, why not? But the majority of the Syrian Kurdish want to stay in Syria, still in Syria, but with right, with language, with all cultural and political and local administration, and it's their right, and we must engage ourselves to promote those rights.
Thank you very much, Salam, for this. This is what we have so far from our audience, and I mean, because Casa Árabe has been involved in a way so many initiatives, and also I wanted to also let's say second or emphasize what Salam said about the expressions in art, in the world of art, be it literature or film, or I mean, we had as you probably know, many of you, there's a very touching documentary called For Sama by Waad al-Khatib, who was also here at Casa Árabe a couple of years ago, talking about her experience and her husband's experience as a doctor, and how they had to flee the country, but that it probably shows quite well how the progression of the conflict took somehow everyone by surprise. They never thought that the regime was going to be so repressive, and that it would cross so many lines. I mean, I would like just a short answer, because I would like to finish with a testimony of a very beautiful crafted testimony that the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has released since yesterday. You can find this on their website. It's called Voices from Syria. We are going to play it, and we will finish with that. It's 4 minutes of testimonies of Syrians, female, male, old and young, and minors as well, talking about this terrible disaster that this war has meant for them. But very shortly, Salam, I remember the times when here in Madrid we had a number of figures from the Syrian opposition, and as you said, these were people who hadn't been, let's say, trained for dialogue and democratic values, because they just didn't. There was no space for that in Syria. But there were important voices. I'm thinking of someone like Muaz al-Khatib, who was let's say a moderate but very important and influential figure in Damascus as a former imam of Damascus, of the Damascus Mosque. Where are all these people? I mean, I know that many of them have probably lost their lives, but whoever is alive, is there any incentive to go back to trying to negotiate something, or are the doors closed? Very briefly.
Yeah, now we have what we call the Syrian National Coalition, and it's regrouping some figures of this opposition. They don't have capacity. They try but they wait from others, from Arab country or Western country to help them. Muaz, he's still active in his position, writing his position in social network. He lives in Qatar, and last week we start to have some hope, because Lavrov, he traveled to Doha to meet with the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with the Qatari Minister of Foreign Affairs, to have something to find a solution. And after this meeting, some of the Turk and Qatari met with some representative of the opposition. We think something happening we don't have any information, but something happening to find a solution. Some people forget everything now. They return to their teaching in the university. Some other they are dead, but some others still hoping in a better future for Syrian people.
Thank you very much. So there seems to be, as one of the songs, Barry White, I think, said, there's something in the air. So we hope it's something good in the air. We finish with that. Salam Kawakibi, thank you very much, Director of the Arab Center for Political Research and Studies of Paris. Thank you for joining us and for agreeing to speak about this very crucial war crisis, not only for Syrians, but for the region and for the world. Next week, we will be talking again about Syria with Médecins Sans Frontières, about the dimension, the humanitarian dimension that we have touched upon slightly, but we will have a proper in-depth talk with MSF next week. So thank you very much. Salam, it's a pleasure to have you here virtually. Hopefully next time we can see you in Madrid instead of on a screen. And as I said, I will finish with, I wish it had been a dream. These are the voices from Syria with the renowned Syrian clarinetist Kinan Azme that musicalize the voices of 100 Syrians as they share their experiences over the last decade. So until the next time, bye.
ما كنا نعرف أن نوصل هون، كان يوم يومين نخلص من الأزمة.
يعني توقعت صراحة وضبيت شنطتي إني أرجع لبيتي بعد أسبوع.
يعني أيام تنتهي الأزمة.
ما أعتمد معنا استمر عدة سنوات.
توقعاتي يعني إنه بالأول إنه فترة بدها تعدي، شهر بيعدي، هي طولت.
بصراحة بتمنى لو كانت حلم.
زوجي راح ليجيب خبز وفجأة
بدل ما يجي ويجيب لي الخبز جاني خبر موته.
لما يكون صديق لك ينقتل قدام عينك بطريقة بشعة جدا، فوق ما تتصور انها بشعة يعني، وبنفس الوقت يعني ما تقدر لا تحكي او تقدر تسوي شيء يعني.
قرر زوجي الله يرحمه انه يطلع على البيت وينزل ويشوف شوية اغراض وينزلهم، فما بعرف شو بدي اقول. هو طالع توفى على باب الملجأ، ما قدرنا نطلع نشوفه.
فترة من الفترات أنا خسرت أهلي، خسرت أب، خسرت أم، وخسرت أخوي الكبير.
القصف شغال على اليمين وعلى اليسار وعم نبكي كلنا. الساعة 6 الصبح نحن طالعين، كان القنص شغال فوق روسنا.
يعني كان هم الوحيد إني أنقذهم من هالأزمة هذه.
ومضيت عمري كله نزوح، وكل سنة أقضيها بمدرسة شكل، وتعرفت على رفقات كتير، وكمان نزحت من عندهم.
بعد 10 سنين صرت هلأ أكثر صنعت مني الأزمة شخص تاني ما بيشبهني.
دخلنا في نفق مظلم آخرته في ضوء، بس مسافة لنطلع من النفق ما حدا بيعرفها غير رب العالمين.
أصعب شيء بهالحياة صوت الضرب.
تركونا نحن لحالنا نعاني.
ما توقعت إني أطلع من بيتي وأوصل لهذا المكان، خاصة إني أستقر أنا وولادي بخيمة.
إنه كنا نايمين فاتت علينا الماء بالخيام وتعبى غراضي ماء وحسيت بالبرد.
والأشياء اللي خلتني صامدة هو إيماني بقوة سوريا وناسها، والأمل موجود فينا.
ما بنسى وقفت رفقاتي بقربي، كنا ندعم بعضنا البعض.
أكثر شيء هيك حسيت حالي عملته بهال10 سنين إنه حافظت على زوجتي وضلت معي.
الغلا والتعب بس اللي مصبرني بريح قلبي إنه عمي يروحوا على المدارس.
أتمنى إنه تنتهي الحرب، توقف حاجتنا بقى، تعبنا لأنه ما عاد فينا.
نتمنى نرجع لبلادنا ونعيش حياة أحلى من هيك.